I don't know how I feel about the intro. I didn't really like it first time around. I still don't like it, but I'm having second thoughts when I see additional vocals by Natasha Kanya and by Garm. For the moment, having done away with that Christopher Reeg bullshit. Because, is that them in the intro? That's a boss-ass move, having other prominent musicians open your album for you. Snoop Dogg did that with Doggy Style, as you may recall. And who else is dropping a reference like that when talking new Mayhem? But Jim, I Diddly Hate and Avery No, Dempsey, Phil Vanderhood, and you. How about that? Welcome in. Thank you for joining us. We're talking Liturgy of Death, and I'll have, I'm sure, more to say about this anon, so I'm not going to issue a full and comprehensive review of the full album here. I'm just going to answer really quick a couple tangential questions. Does this album meet the minimum expectation that I had for it, that I feel like everyone should have for it? And accordingly, was my prediction for it correct? Now, what is the minimum standard? Well, these are ambiguous questions here. Is Mayhem shitting on their legacy by putting out albums in this day and age? I can see an argument for it. I personally do not make that argument. I'd be like, you know what? Nobody is giving these guys honest work in any other field, and probably nobody is giving them honest work in any other genre of the music industry. So, if they've got to put out albums to put food on the table, and anyone's got to put out a black metal this late in the game, better Mayhem than anyone else, eh? Granted, that's not stopping anyone else. But there we are. Now, it is the case that, for better or for worse, Mayhem really do not repeat themselves. Every single album has a distinct feel, a unique vibe, even while generally being distinctly Mayhem. And that really picks up with Grand Declaration, because there's not a whole lot of common uniting threads from that earliest era to that second and beyond. Primarily since Hellhammer just developed such a distinct and unique voice in the interim between, the De Mysterious era and the entire Wolfslayer Abyss cycle. Well, actually, even though he was identifiably new, modern, updated Hellhammer by Wolfslayer, it's also possible to say that Wolfslayer is so much less angular in its shape than Grand Declaration that it almost provides a fair bridge. But at any rate, Mayhem really is a band with distinct eras, and some might divide the eras by the singers: the Attila era, the Maniac era, the Attila era. I would say you pretty much have to divide it along guitarists, though, because the first era encompasses a couple of different periods. Death Crush does not sound anything like De Mysterious, and it just doesn't sound anything like any of it after Euronymous. But Blasphemer was also such a distinct guitarist. And Ghoul and Taylok may not be as such like distinct guitarists in that regard, but the guys who own the trademark to the band hire guitar players and are like, alright, you're in the band, now you write the album. So that shows what Mayhem places on the guitars in terms of premium. So I do divide it in three distinct eras. There is Euronymous era, Blasphemer era, and then the two-man era, because after Blasphemer, it takes two guys to replace him. And you really kind of can't replace the best guitar player to essentially ever dabble in black metal. But if they had Steve Vai, well, they got a couple of Kirk Hammetts in his stead. So there we go with that. The murder magic of the De Mysteriis era is over, and even the malice magic of the Blasphemer era is over. And so we're at a point now where, like, are they just shitting on their legacy? I can see the argument. But I defend them on the grounds that they continue to meet that minimum standard. Every album is a distinct entity unto itself. They have never repeated themselves, and yet remain identifiably Mayhem throughout. I had a prediction for this one, and it was based primarily on the artwork that dropped for it, but I looked at it, and y'all know I judge an album as much on aesthetic as on the music, right? I looked at the art and I said, I think the music is going to be Damon Part 2. Was I correct? It's ambiguous. There are multiple ways to view this, and there's likelihood that I may come back with a different perspective later. But my initial assessment, having just gone out and gone to the trouble of buying the album and listening to it and looking through it, I'd be like, I think I was mostly wrong. And it's going to take some time to grow. So I'm not doing a full review. I can't do the full album right now because I haven't even listened to the full album. I haven't taken any time for it to grow with me or assess it in any depth. So we'll talk about it later. That contingent on the premise that the good Lord allows me to do so with further days and further breath. But yeah, should he so smile on my endeavors, that'll happen. And in the meantime, I'm just essentially answering that. Yeah. Was I disappointed? Did I just buy Damon Part 2? It is distinctly not as unique to Damon as Damon is to Esoteric. That I can tell right away. I'd be like, it's closer than my comfort zone would have it be. But then again, Esoteric is itself a pretty distinct and unique entity within the Mayhem canon. So, when I did a review for Damon, for a webzine, it's in Spanish if you really want to read it, I gave a quick summary of all of the albums leading up to it, and I expressed them in terms of musical phasing, because I'm not a musical phrasing, because I am not a musician. I'm listening to it as, just someone who listens to music, and I likened the albums respectively to the following. Death Crush is like essentially walking around in the cover of an early Exhumed album in that kitchen, except it's not faked. De Mysteriis is like being bounced around in a magnetic storm cloud. Grand Declaration is like being in a labyrinth populated by Peter Bruegel characters. Chimera is like a window into the swirling inferno of hell. And Ordo Ad K was like a different version of hell. The Outer Darkness one, where you're just stumbling blindly into sharp objects in pitch black, and it smells kind of like pungent fungus and rotten blood. And then Esoteric, I didn't actually use this illustration to define it, but shortly after I thought, you know what really sums up Esoteric? Is the vibe of Metroid Fusion. The first time you play it, and you beat Section 6 and get into the restricted laboratory. Jesus Christ, that was a really hard one. Into the restricted laboratory. That section of Metroid Fusion is a lot what I liken esoteric warfare too. I bet Attila would be proud to hear that. And assuming he plays Metroid, someone from, you never know someone's background. And Attila does seem like the most normal and well-adjusted individual in the band, at least until Telak. Ghoul reminds me a little bit, just from my vibes, seeing these guys in action a couple times, and, the general public persona. He seems a bit more like a Hellhammer. Gentlemanly and quietly off-putting. I highly approve of his vibe. I especially like the fact that in Esoteric Warfare, although he was referenced, he did not have a picture in with the rest of them. I like those little details. Like, that one N-Steel photo where, like, 2 of the guys got corpse paint and 2 don't. Or we saw Deicide and the one guitar player had a bondage hood on. The rumor was that one of the Hoffmans ditched out on the show, so the guitar tech filled in, but it looked badass when one person in the band had the bondage hood on. It was very Deicide appropriate. Not quite a mannequin stuffed with blood, but, you take what you can get. I think that was, in Torment in Hell tour that happened. Maybe Scars the Crucifix tour. Anyway, so as to this one, it does have a total death vibe, whereas Damon was a very hell vibe. And so there is that. The first few songs, as I've heard them, they've got a real murky quality. The first song, I was like, wow, this sounds like song 8 from the last couple albums. So I've got hopes for it. And I have to go through a little more to, and give it some time to brew. But my initial impression is that I was pleasantly incorrect. That it is distinct and apart from Damon, at least enough to say it's not really a repeat. But it is way closer than from last time around, so... It is ambiguous, and there may be time and opinions changing in time, but it's how it's going to be, right? It's life. Or, in this case, it's death. Alright, anyway, yeah, that's what I got for this one. I'll have more thoughts about it, again, assuming that the Lord should so smile upon my endeavors and grant us all the breath and days to converge again. In the meantime, I am Jim Dempsey. I'm gonna dip on out, and thank you for joining us, but in the meantime, we'll catch you next time.